Senator Gutierrez, for what purpose?
Just a few questions.
Do you yield, sir?
Of course, I'll yield for questions.
All right.
You know, Brian, my goodness, how do you follow that? And Boris Miles, Senator Miles, and Senator Whitmire. I was leaning on my chair over there thinking to myself, Brian Hughes is a cyborg, like a machine. Just keep going. And it was like God brought down this epiphany on me, and I saw my name plaque on there. On the back of the chair. Heck, I didn't even know it was there. Did you know you had a plaque on the back of your chair?
I didn't know it when I first got here. Somebody had to point it out to me. Didn't have those over in the house.
I thought to myself, you know, this is a big deal.
Pretty neat.
Pretty neat. This kid from the west side of San Antonio. Did you know I didn't speak English in the first grade?
I did not know that. We haven't talked about that. I did not know that.
Somehow I developed this accent. I don't know where that came from. But pretty neat. I didn't cheat to get here. You didn't cheat. You didn't, right?
No, sir.
And I didn't cheat.
No, sir.
And I know none of these people cheated. Because that's what this thing is about, right? It's about some folks are cheating, right? According to you and some other folks in the room.
According to testimony before the State Affairs Committee and the Select Committee on Election Integrity and the House Elections Committee. Yes, sir.
I had a Republican DA back in the day. Her name was Susan Reed. Real nice lady. Real nice lady. She did an investigation on voter fraud. The only voter fraud she found was 2 American citizens claiming to be Mexicans, nationals, to get out of jury duty. Really interesting. Republican district attorney. I wasn't going to bring this up, and the new me, the senatorial me, isn't going to get into names at all. I didn't think that this was some burning problem in Mineola, but apparently it is. Because you mentioned that there's 2 Democrats that were picking at each other and got indicted, or one got indicted because the other one said, oh, this guy did this, right?
Yes, sir. Not in my hometown, but in my district, in the neighboring county, over in Gray County. Great folks, great county. And the county commissioner who's under indictment happens to be a Democrat, happens to be African American, and the complainant happens to be a Democrat, happens to be African American. Of course, these rules are colorblind, apply to everybody.
And that's fair, but that's also sometimes the gotcha nature of what we do to get to where we are. I got you. Sometimes it's the other guy saying, I got you. And sometimes it's unfounded, right? He hired Mary the vote hauler. He must be the bad guy. There's 3 Republicans, by the way, we don't need to get into names because I don't need to go there, that hired a vote hauler that our former colleague, yours and mine, Ken Paxton, just indicted, took the case out to Kerr County, God knows why. Republicans.
Well, there have been claims on Republicans and Democrats. You bet.
So your contention,
absolutely.
Your contention has happened. I'm going to give those Republicans the benefit of the doubt that they hired this gal to hand out pens, keychains, and calendars. I'll let that case flow through the system. I wasn't going to talk about it. And I think that that's about where we need to go with it. And I bring it up only to show that what we are doing in this legislation, not only is there criminality that is based on inferences, and I know you're probably one of the smartest lawyers I've ever met, but I also know you have not done a whole lot of criminal law.
That's right. Don't have much experience in criminal law.
Is this a rebuttable presumption, a rebuttable inference? The inference on page, oh goodness gracious, I knew I had to be prepared
So
for this.
in the voter ID provision, if
It's on page
on
40.
the mail ballot application,
Yeah.
you put your driver license number or your state ID number.
No.
Okay, that creates a presumption that the signature is valid.
No, Brian. That's not what I'm talking about. There's an inference that says that if you hired this person to do something else, if you hired the person to do something else, the inference is that you've hired her to harvest the votes. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm looking for the
Page
vote harvesting.
45. In this section, line 26, section F, in this section, compensation in exchange for vote harvesting services is inferred if a person who performed vote harvesting services for a candidate or campaign solicits, receives, or is offered compensation from the candidate or campaign directly or through a third party for services other than vote harvesting. How the hell is that fair?
Well, so if the campaign hires someone for vote harvesting, but then calls it something else, that means they cannot evade the law. That's how I read it, but you help me. I don't know as much
That's how
about
I read it too.
Okay.
But how is that fair from a criminality standpoint where we have elements of crime? Now we've got some inference on maybe an assumption. So in this instance, those Republican candidates that may have hired this gal to give away pins, keychains, and calendars to voters now, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, because unfortunately for them, the evidence came out as one of those gotcha things on video, came out on NBC affiliate, and then our colleague, Ken Paxton, indicted the gal. And I hope those other folks have the defense, at least, that they hired her for pens, keychains, and calendars. I say pens, keychains, and calendars because when I was a kid, I used to do that telephone marketing stuff, and I used to sell pens, keychains, and calendars. But that's sometimes often what we do in our campaigns, right? Put our names on them. But under your bill here, if you, God help us, if we hire someone to distribute literature, a baseball cap, a t-shirt, and that gal goes off and does something else for another candidate, because sometimes these people work for a couple different candidates, right? God help you if that person is doing something illicit, because in your bill, this fact pattern, these people, these Republican candidates, if this happened post-September, this indictment, those candidates would be guilty of a third-degree felony.
Well,
because the law of parties applies, right?
Let me be clear, Senator, so that we're seeing this the same way. Anyone, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Independent, any person is subject to the provisions of this act. And I want to make sure we're clear. For the definition of ballot harvesting, it requires a number of specific elements. It's not just canvassing, it's not knocking doors, it's not anything like that. But if you interact in person with the voter, and this involves an official ballot, application for ballot by mail or mail ballot, and your interaction is to influence that voter for a particular candidate or measure, and you're paid, only then would ballot harvesting be triggered. And I'm sure we're on the same page, but I want to make sure.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's
I may
wrong.
not have said that right.
I'm sorry, but that's incorrect.
Okay, well, help me out.
Page 45,
Yes, sir, I got it.
section F,
I beg your pardon?
line 26,
Okay,
sub F,
yes.
it says, in this section, compensation in exchange for vote harvesting services is inferred, is presumed, assumed, however you want to call it, if a person who performed vote harvesting services for a candidate or campaign solicits, receives, or is offered campaign from the candidate, campaign directly or through for services other than vote harvesting services. So if you hire Mary the vote hauler to go hand out some signs and she just happened to do something illegal, That's why I'm
Senator.
trying to give your friends the benefit of the doubt here, because I actually think that the Republican folks that hired this gal, there was one Democrat too. I actually think that in about three of the people, three of those instances, I believe she was just handing out stuff. One of them I'm not so sure, because he sure did pay her a lot of money.
So just to be clear, this is not a question of the person who just does something illegal, but the section you just read uses the term vote harvesting services, and that's that narrow definition I was reading before. And it's on page 45, starting in line 2. Vote harvesting services means in-person interaction with one or more voters involving an official ballot, ballot by mail, or application for ballot by mail intended to deliver votes for a specific candidate or measure. So I want to make sure the definition you read about the inference, it's still tied back to the definition of vote harvesting services, which is pretty tight.
I guess you and I guess you're not quite understanding me. And
Okay.
maybe I'm not explaining
trying.
myself.
I'm really trying. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. It basically says here, if I hire someone to hand out my T-shirts or my calendars or my cap, and that person also is vote harvesting, then it is a rebuttable presumption that I have to refute. And all of a sudden, I'm guilty of this. So I guess what I want to tell you is watch out who you hire to hand out your T-shirts. Because it's not vague at all. I've never seen a criminal section, a criminal statute, have a rebuttable presumption of this nature. And quite frankly, it's a third-degree felony.
Well, Senator, I want to be clear that inference is only on the one element of compensation. The other elements still have to be proven. And again, you know criminal law and I don't, but I suspect if you were to hire someone to perform an illegal act.
Oh, no.
But in fact, you cast it as, I don't mean me. Let's say I hire someone to commit an illegal act, but I couch it as something else. Well, I can't hide behind that. And I think that's the idea here.
Yeah, I
You can't
get
just
it.
set up a straw man and get away with breaking the law.
I get it, but that's not what the language says. The inference is that you hired them to do an illegal act.
The inference is
you hired them to do an illegal
inference
act.
is on the compensation element only. The others still have to be proven.
Yeah. The inference is that you hired them for an illegal act. So, are we done with this, by the way? Is this it? Is this the end of the line for voting? Because you've been here for a lot longer than me. In 2009, I arrived, and boy, we had voter ID in 2009, the great big chub in the House. 2011, voter ID part 2. 2013, more voter stuff. 15, so on and so on. Is this it? Are we done?
Well, Senator, I don't know if the voters are going to send me back, but I hope whoever is here will listen to the voters. And if there's testimony before the legislature, if there's evidence that there are problems in voting or in transportation or education or anything else, that the legislature will come back and try to address those problems.
I know that the fine folks of Mineola are going to send you back because you're a very fine person. But what we're trying to do here today, and what we try to do every day, is find the temporal truth. And the temporal truth about this is that some folks didn't like the outcome in Houston, Texas. So what I'm getting at is, when we do the retrofitting and we get the great machines in Houston, Texas, we have some basic foundational principles here as Americans. Cicero said something. You brought this to my attention earlier. Boy, it was so... You said something about Cicero, and I started looking, because I used to love my Roman history. And I pulled this up. So he said something about government, right? He said the budget should be balanced. You and I can both agree on that. The treasury refilled, public debt reduced, the arrogance of officialdom tampered and controlled. We do have a lot of that in this place from time to time. Not anybody in this room, by the way, and the assistance to foreign lands curtailed, lest Rome be bankrupt. And here's the best part I like. Freedom is participation in power. What does that mean to you? Freedom is participation in power.
I think that means that the government works for the people. And to be truly free, the people have to have a say, have to have a hand, have to have a voice. Again, I'm no scholar, as is evident to everyone, but that's what that means to me.
You are a scholar, because Cicero was around when who was around? He was a senator, right? And who was there? Who killed him, first off?
Read about it, read a little bit about it, but I'm not an expert. I'm a business major.
Who killed him?
You'd have to tell me.
Mark Antony killed him. Why'd he kill him?
Go ahead.
Because he wanted a revenge for Caesar, right?
Yes, sir.
And Caesar, he got a little ahead of himself, and he became a dictator, right?
So that's what I've read.
Cicero. Freedom is participation in power. Freedom, participation, voting. Voting is power. It's your personal power.
Sir. Yes, sir.
And so, if we retrofit all the machines in Houston and getting people to drive through a tent or a parking lot or whatever, if we get the good machines, are we okay with them doing the drive-through thing then? Do we change the law next session? I'm just wondering.
I hope we listen to the folks back home. If there are problems, I hope we address them. And of course, technology continues to improve. These voting machines we have today are not what they had 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but it's an ongoing process.
I'm going to not quite get off my soapbox, but now I'm going to ask the very smart questions that the staffers send us, because those are the really good questions.
Those tend to be the best ones.
They're not all the smart alecky stuff that we do, but it's good stuff. On page 45, 46, Senate Bill 7, and 46, SB 7 says, compensation for vote harvesting services inferred if a person who performed the vote harvesting services for a candidate or campaign solicits, receives, or is offered compensation from the candidate or campaign. Correct? We talked about that. You just defined it earlier.
Yes, sir.
My question's about the legal inference. Again, what is a legal inference and what is the consequence? Is the inference rebuttable? Question number one. Is the inference rebuttable?
Yes.
Because it doesn't say anything about a rebuttable presumption. I said that earlier.
An inference is weaker than a rebuttable presumption, as I understand, but you tell me. That's what I thought it meant.
We already suggested that you're a smarter lawyer than me. So I'm going to assume, and at least for legislative intent here, we have a rebuttable, not even a rebuttable presumption, because an inference is weaker. So in this situation, this inference is rebuttable, correct?
That's my understanding of the term.
All right, fair enough. How often are inferences of this type used in, we don't need to get into the whole criminal law question. We already covered that as well. This is some good stuff here, though. Is it fair to say that the new crime of vote harvesting applies only to in-person interactions with a voter?
Yes.
Yes, all right.
Yes.
So this is where you and I really have to figure this thing out, because you and I are going to be knocking on doors here pretty soon, right?
We're going to be what?
Knocking on doors?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if a paid campaign worker, some kid that works for you,
yes,
we do pay him from time to time, or volunteer, knocks on a door, and the voter says, I got my ballot today, and the campaign worker says, I'd like you to vote for Brian Hughes. This bill makes that a third-degree felony, doesn't it?
So I want to be clear. I'm on page 45. Vote harvesting services means in-person interaction with one or more voters involving an official ballot voted by mail, application for ballot by mail. And so if there's interaction with the ballot, if that voter says, here's my mail ballot, and our campaign worker says, oh, let me help you fill that out for Brian, that's a problem. If they're getting paid and they're helping them with that mail ballot to influence to vote for me, they have committed vote harvesting under this statute, as I read it. That's sure my intent.
Pretty dangerous. Pretty dangerous. So let's get some intent going here. You're okay with your paid worker saying, vote for Brian, but don't write anything on the ballot. You're okay with that part? That's legal.
Oh, Senator, I want to be clear. This is about interaction with one or more voters. It involves an official ballot voted by mail, or application.
I know.
So those specific documents. One of those documents, the ballot, application for ballot by mail, or mail ballot. It's those specific documents that have to be involved here.
All right. Well,
not just talking about them, but those specific documents.
We got to clear this up. Mrs. Smith in Mineola. All right. Your paid walker knocks on the door. Mrs. Smith, how are you today? I work for Brian Hughes. He's a great senator. We love him. We want you to bring him back. Oh, Mrs. Smith says, great. I got my mail-in ballot today. Mrs. Smith would like you to vote for Brian and put that on your mail-in ballot. Is that legal or illegal? Simple question. Just want to verify.
What you described does not sound to me like it would qualify, but I'll tell you this. This bill passes, we're sure going to be more carefully training our volunteers and our workers to make sure we don't get close to the line.
You didn't give us a real straight answer there on whether that was legal or illegal, because he didn't touch the ballot.
I don't believe what you described would violate this statute.
Because your campaign workers paid, all right?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith identifies as receiving a ballot and just got it in the mail yesterday,
yes,
right?
That's right.
And your campaign worker says, vote for my boss because he's the greatest. He's cyborg.
That's right.
He's a heck of a orator.
That's not right, but if they say that, that's the fact.
William Jennings Bryant of the legislature.
You're very kind.
You are. And you got some stamina, boy, let me tell you. I bet you. Let me stop there on that one. Now, we have to work that one out, Brian. I can't have our walkers knocking on doors, vote for Roland.
Right.
And all of a sudden, that kid just committed a crime, and by the law of party, so did I.
No, Senator, unless that is involving the official ballot voted by mail, or application, as you know, those are
Mrs.
documents.
Smith just said I have the ballot.
Those are specific documents, and if interaction involves one of those documents, and that interaction is intended to deliver votes for you, for me,
that's a crime.
That would be a problem.
All right, so your campaign worker, let me switch it up on you, knocks on the door. Mrs. Smith says, hello, vote for Brian because we love him. And she says, I just got my mail-in ballot, but I need some help filling it out because I can't see too well. And he says, okay. And she says, I like Brian. I want to vote for him. And he helps her fill it out. Did he just commit a crime?
Senator, I'm going to instruct people helping me not to do that. If that person is there being paid by a campaign to deliver votes for that campaign, and they're interacting with that mail ballot, that's a problem.
But it's not a crime now
that's a
to
problem.
do that. But right now, that would be illegal? Would that be legal today?
Right now, under the law, you would have to report that you had assisted that person with their ballot. As you know, when you current law, if you assist someone with a mail ballot, you've got to make a record of that. How many people you helped? That's the law today, as you know, on assisting folks to prepare those ballot applications, those ballots by mail. There are already reporting requirements in place today. So that would trigger that already.
I hope the dean is listening because he's going to be running in big elections soon. And the rules are changing. So, as you know, I think we've covered that, and you and I are going to have to figure out some kind of training course so we don't trip this one up, because we're going to have all those little kids that work for us in federal prison or state prison, I guess. That would be a crummy place to have little kids be.
We want to make sure folks know what the rules are.
Boy, I tell you, man. So, we have laws that sometimes become void for vagueness. You understand that, right? If it doesn't give notice to the public about which specific behaviors it prohibits.
That's right. It's giving notice nothing more fundamental to due process than notice, so folks know what the law requires so they can order their conduct.
In this one, we already went through. Vote harvesting services are in-person interactions with a voter involving an official ballot voted by mail intended to deliver votes for a specific candidate or measure, correct?
Those are the elements. Yes, sir. I believe you read that correctly.
Let's break down the elements. Number one, in-person interaction, correct?
That's right.
With a voter.
One or more. That's right.
Involving an official ballot.
Well, that's right. That's part of it.
Intended to deliver votes.
Well, it's official ballot or a ballot voted by mail or an application for a ballot voted by mail. But yes, intended to deliver votes. Go ahead.
Aren't all those interactions between a campaign worker and a voter and intended to deliver votes for that campaign or candidate? Aren't all those interactions?
They don't all.
Aren't those? Isn't that stuff we do?
No, Senator. Senator, let's be precise.
No.
3 documents. 3 documents are described there. One of 3 documents must be involved in the interaction, or this is not triggered. Got to be the official ballot, application for ballot by mail, or ballot by mail. Those literal, physical, one of those 3 documents must be present.
I get it, and that's stuff we do every day. That's how I got here, but I didn't cheat. I knocked on the door.
Senator, I've never knocked on a door, and I've done a lot of door knocking.
Block walk?
I've never knocked on a door.
How the hell did you win?
Well, I'd like to finish the answer. I've never knocked on a door where the voter came to the door with the ballot in their hand or an application for ballot by mail. This is those 3 specific documents that are specifically described in the statute.
So most of this are elements likely that apply to campaign behavior.
No, sir, they're not.
Yeah, sure they are.
All the elements have to be there.
Okay.
All the elements have to be there for this to be triggered. It's not or, it's and.
I better not talk to any voters that have a mail-in ballot in their house, and they better not be blind or incapable of writing, or they better not need any assistance.
Someone who's not working for the campaign needs to provide that assistance.
Mm-hmm. So after the mail-in ballots are sent to the voter, aren't all the interactions with them involving their ballot? Let me go back to one thing here. We already know the behavior that we've described a few times already under this new bill is going to be illegal, and it's behavior, quite frankly, that many of our campaigns do, and quite innocently. What happens when the person gets the ballot and your paid campaign worker calls them on the phone?
That would not be an in-person. Would not be an in-person interaction. Would not be triggered by this statute.
What's the rational difference between those 2 behaviors? Still influencing them?
The interaction with the ballot, application for ballot by mail, or the ballot by mail.
You know, Brian,
that's vote harvesting.
I'll tell you what, after this bill, because we didn't cheat, you and I.
No, sir.
We didn't cheat. And you're a good, hardworking member for the folks of Mineola and beyond. And I'm a good, hardworking, honest person for my district, and so is everybody in here.
Looks like it to me. Yes,
everybody
sir.
in here. But after this bill, God help us all. You might want to think about your retirement, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
Bingo. Senator Hall, for what purpose?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that the interchange between Senator Hughes and myself earlier on legislative intent be reduced to writing and included in the journal.
Senator Hall requests that the journal reflect the conversation between him and Senator Hughes. Please, is your objection? Hearing none.